Hi everyone, and welcome to the Star Wars Reading Club book review of Star Wars Aftermath by Chuck Wendig. And what I'll do is I'll just start off by saying thank you to everyone last week for all of their recommendations. I have to say that a big reason for picking up this book was just because a lot of people had recommended it after reading Lords of the Sith. And maybe too, I'll just start off. I have to say it probably wasn't going to be high on my list to pick up and read, mainly for the fact that I saw a lot of criticism online of this book before you guys had recommended it. But since a lot of people put it out there, I thought, well, maybe I should give it a chance, and I just have to say that I'm happy that I did. And I didn't read a lot of the criticisms, but, some, like, the full reviews on it. But I think a lot of people had some problems with its writing style or just some of the parts of the book. And for me, it wasn't a perfect book, but I do have to say that I did enjoy it. And just off the bat, if I just gave a general sense of what I thought about it, I definitely thought it was engaging. And as a first book to a trilogy, I think that it was a good way to start. But like I said, not a perfect book, and I'll get into some of the criticisms later in this review. But I think what I'll do is just as a timeline again, we're a few months after the Battle of Endor from Return of the Jedi. So an excellent time to start, again, to a trilogy right in the kind of the months after the Battle of Endor is perfect for me. I think I mentioned it in the Bloodline review, but anything that has to do in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens is must-read for me at this point. So I was hoping to get some information, just sort of what was going on with the New Republic and with the Rebel Alliance, and of course anything that ties the Empire's sort of shift into the First Order. I want to read as much of that as possible, and I'm hoping to get a little bit more, which we'll get into in just a second. But one of the things that I did like about this book is just the fact that you can really tell that Chuck Wendig did his homework on the Star Wars universe. There was basically tons of planets. There was lots of quick little scenes where they sort of jumped all over the galaxy from planet to planet. A lot of the planets that you've seen in the movies were in this book, Naboo, Tatooine, those types of planets. I really enjoyed that. I really liked the quick cuts too. We sort of saw a glimpse into what was going on around the entire galaxy right after the Battle of Endor, and we got a wide range of opinions on what people thought, thought about the Empire and thought about the Rebels. So I really enjoyed that. And again, you basically saw, I wasn't keeping track or anything like that, but you saw a vast majority of species just put into the book, from Twi'leks, of course, tons of humans, but again, Dathomirians and Zabraks and every type of species you could think of was basically put into this book. So tip of the hat to Chuck Wendig for just the amount of work that obviously went into the book. And just to get into sort of the main characters now and some of the interesting parts, I was a big fan of the Norra Wexley and Temmin Wexley characters. I thought that it was written really well, and it sort of gave me glimpses back. I don't know if anyone read the book Kenobi by John Jackson Miller, but there was sort of a mother and sort of a mother-son and mother-daughter sort of character relationship in that book that really reminded me of the relationship between Norra Wexley and Temmin as well. So I liked Kenobi, and I thought that this relationship worked very well in this book too. So it was a good connection for the main characters. I like the fact as well that Norra was a Y-Wing pilot on the attack of the second Death Star. So I think that was a good hook. And, I had no problems with those characters. I liked their motivations throughout the entire book. And I guess if we just go into a couple of the other ones, not a main part of the book, but definitely an important early character and sort of a character that was part of the entire book, and a lot of it was based around what they did, was just Captain Wedge Antilles. And I like that Wedge was in the book. I think that too, the idea though, I was kind of not really rolling my eyes, but just the fact that, well, if you're going from planet to planet in the Outer Rim looking for remnants of the Empire, basically you're going to get what he got, in my opinion, which was to sort of get captured by a huge Imperial fleet at some point. So I thought that getting Wedge in there was a good. It was good by Chuck Wendig, but again, too, why not go with a larger group if you're going to be looking for the Imperial fleet? But either way, it was nice to see Wedge in there. One of my favorite characters from this book, and I thought again too, Chuck Wendig did a good job of just writing for Admiral Ray Sloan. And we've seen Admiral Sloan a number of times throughout the books. I've read A New Dawn earlier in the year, so we got some great information and some sort of just character continuation of Admiral Sloan. We even saw that there was a mention of Count Vidian from A New Dawn, which I really liked. She sort of took the what she had learned from that experience and kind of continued it on even a decade after that book. I think it's a decade plus by the time we get to Aftermath. So it was great to see the continuation of Admiral Sloan, and she's pretty much taking on a large leadership role in the Empire and trying to bring the fractured Empire together. So I really liked Admiral Sloan. It makes sense to sort of have a strong character that they've already created in the Star Wars universe just sort of be that strong character by this time, a few months after the Battle of Endor. And just before we get into just a couple points just about what Admiral Sloan recognizes about the Empire, I do have to say that one of the disappointing aspects of the book for me was just the meeting that was taking place on Akiva, just between, I guess he gives himself the title of Grand Moff, but Grand Moff Pandian, and then General Shale, and then the Emperor, I guess an advisor to Emperor Palpatine, and a Sith cultist, I think it's Yupe Tashu. I was kind of disappointed by those scenes. It dragged out a little bit too long without really anything being discussed or anything happening. I really wanted sort of to see a little bit more direction of where the Empire was going just based on the meeting that they were having. It was sort of built up early on that this was a huge gathering of sort of the remnants of the Empire. I thought that we were going to get a little bit more from important higher-ups in the Imperial system in the old Empire. So I was kind of hoping a little bit more from them, but it did sort of illustrate. I think that Chuck Wendig did a good job of sort of putting it out there that at this point the Empire is very fractured. So it makes sense that we didn't get too much from the meeting, but we're basically 2/3 through the book, and they're still just sort of sitting around just kind of wondering, well, what do we do next? I would have liked to see a little bit more being discussed, but there were some good scenes which we'll get into in just a little bit that did come out of the Imperial meeting. Now, they really push it a number of times just about how weak the Empire is at this point, which I liked. I know that we're going to sort of get into, at least I have to assume anyway, the Battle of Jakku, so I was hoping still that there was some strength in the Empire just going forward so that we could get some good scenes. But, they really push it at a number of times just how scattered and how leaderless the Empire is at this point in the book. I know that I think Admiral Sloan was lamenting a number of times. It's not clear who has authority, and all of the higher-ups in the Imperial military are sort of fighting each other, trying to jockey for position. So I like that. But the very end of the book, again, there's that epilogue scene that I really liked. Again, Admiral Sloan concludes that the Empire is fractured, and there's a lot of individuals within the Empire, or at least what remains, that want to try to use the fracture to promote themselves. I wish we saw a little more about who that was she was talking to at the end as well. Like, for example, that was the type of character that I wanted to hear from if you're going to have a meeting of higher-ups remaining in the Empire. But one of the things that I had to ask myself after that scene, if it's leaderless and the Empire is completely fractured, where do they go from here? I know that we're probably going to get to the Battle of Jakku in one of the upcoming books, but if the Empire is fractured and leaderless, I wonder if Chuck Wendig is going to go the direction where the Empire sort of makes its final stand, or if the Empire is going to kind of put out sort of a bare bones fleet to sort of, do a gambit of some sort where they make it seem like they've put up their best efforts on the Battle of Jakku and then retreat, have that Imperial exodus to the Outer Rim. So there is a lot of interesting parts that could come out of this, but I do wonder, where do they go from here? I mean, the Empire at that epilogue scene, it basically sets out the fact that the Empire was this ineffective and sort of crude, inelegant machine. So I'm just wondering, if they've broken it down into pieces now, are we going to get that big sort of Battle of Endor scene that really puts an end to the Empire, or are we going to get people that remain from the Empire recognize, well, we have to just run at this point and build up to fight later? So there's a number of different ways that it can go. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the remaining 2 books. Again, one of the things that I really like seeing, again, we had a lot of jump scenes to a lot of different planets. It was very interesting to see how many vast opinions there were just on what people thought about the rebels, whether they considered them to be rebels or terrorists still, or, now they're the fact that they're represented as freedom fighters. But we do see that even months after the Battle of Endor, there are still individuals in the galaxy that want to see the Empire and are kind of giving the impression that they're okay with the emergence of something like the First Order. So it was good to see just the wide range of opinions throughout the galaxy. And one of my favorite scenes was just the scene with Mon Mothma. And I think what they're doing is surveying after a battle that had occurred on a planet. And it wasn't a significant battle or anything, but she's sort of lamenting with her advisors the fact that the war is dragging out and it's causing a lot of destruction. And she makes the point that she wants to try to bring the galaxy together at this point and be the exact opposite of what the Empire was. But we do get the sort of the first day of the Galactic Senate, which I thought was very interesting. But just on the point of Mon Mothma, I thought that a really good scene, and this was a scene that, might have been easily glossed over, but she sort of makes the point to her advisors that it's sort of vital and very important that the government demilitarize once they figure out that the war has come to an end. And she sort of is putting it out there, I'm going to put up a vote that we cut our military. I think the number was 90%, again, once they're able to confirm that the war has ended. So I thought that was really good stuff, just because it played into the debate that had been sort of emerging and that sort of came to a head by the time that we get to the Era and Bloodline, which is 6 years before the events of The Force Awakens. And in there you see that basically the Senate is at a standstill and nothing can get done because you have these two sides, the centrists who want stronger galactic military, and then the populace who, want to go in the direction of, demilitarization and give each planet in the galaxy more autonomy and more authority. So you can see that populist desire sort of started with Mon Mothma, and it is a great connection because Princess Leia sort of realizes the same thing, that really the populist way of thinking doesn't have a lot of room to continue on at that point, because I think Mon Mothma is sick or can't continue on as Chancellor. But I thought that was great. It really just sort of foreshadowed the need for the Resistance and how the Resistance sort of rose out of the New Republic with the populist desire to demilitarize, but then also the conflict that arose with the centrists and, as we would later come to know, the rise of the First Order. So that was just a great scene. Again, too, you have the commitment to demilitarize in the face of a large portion of the galaxy that wants to have a greater galactic government and who don't want to demilitarize. They want to actually increase military spending. So I thought that was a great scene. Excellent to have Mon Mothma in there. It's going to be really interesting, too, to see how they build off of sort of the first day of the new Galactic Senate. See how it kind of continues forward in the opening months just after the Battle of Endor. So I thought that was a great scene. Now, we also get some really interesting information and just a couple of really good scenes and dialogue between the higher-ups at the meeting on Akiva with the Imperials. What we got from Tashu, who I guess was an advisor to Palpatine and a sort of Sith cultist. So I thought that was really interesting, and just the fact that the advisor is pushing the fact that we have to use deception at this point, basically kind of putting it out there that, well, we've already lost this. It's better now to... they sort of pushed it as this is sort of what we need to do in terms of the dark side, but just to kind of retreat now, move towards the dark, and then I don't know if they're putting it out there as retreat outside of the galaxy or if it's the Outer Rim. I had the opinion interpretation that they wanted them to go outside of the galaxy. But either way, those were very interesting scenes just because, again, we see a lot of foreshadowing of the rise of the First Order, which I really enjoyed. Again, it did make sense, and this is why I was saying earlier, are we going to see the direction where what remains of the Empire does move to want to go sort of hide in the shadows and then rise to fight another day, or if they are going to sort of double down at this point and make their last attempt to try to keep control of the galaxy. But I really liked that. There was some good foreshadowing there. And then there was also, too, just some interesting dialogue of whether or not people within the galaxy, or at least the higher-ups in the Empire, knew that Palpatine was a Sith. And, of course, we know from Lords of the Sith that the Royal Guard knew, at least those members of the Royal Guard had known that Palpatine was a Sith. But again, too, I really like the fact that they're not really making it known if people knew generally, or there was a wide range of people who knew that Palpatine was a Sith. So I thought that there was some interesting information. Just it was nice to see the Sith brought back. And then just in that regard, we had that really interesting and quick scene, I guess, Sith worshippers, the acolytes of the Beyond. And I thought that it was interesting that they were trying to purchase Darth Vader's lightsaber, or at least what was put out there as Darth Vader's lightsaber. I don't think that it is actually the real Darth Vader lightsaber, but maybe you guys have a different opinion. But I thought that was very cool, because after, too, I was left sort of questioning, well, who's these acolytes of the Beyond? Are they Sith worshippers? Are they dark side users? I don't think that it's as far as a dark side user, but I do think that, these individuals might keep the sort of Sith, much like similar to the Church of the Force during the Galactic Empire. Maybe that's what these individuals are going to do post Return of the Jedi. So it's going to be interesting to see, I think, what we get out of the acolytes from the Beyond. And then just lastly, before we get into just some parts that I'm looking forward to in the remaining 2 books, just again, too, the thoughts that we get from General Shale, just in regards to the fact that now we have a view where, I guess, they didn't agree with what Emperor Palpatine did. And she even went so far as to call him a decrepit old goblin who believed in the dark side as some ancient or insane religion. So I thought that was very interesting. Now we see sort of the higher-ups in the Empire sort of turn their back on Palpatine. And I think, too, that there was one scene where saying something like that before obviously would have had you executed. So again, too, it is interesting to see what type of thoughts on Emperor Palpatine start to emerge, and sort of reaches, or at least we can see where it began by the time you get to a book like Bloodline 6 years before The Force Awakens, that opinions have started to turn sort of on Palpatine, and he isn't viewed as sort of the great leader that it probably appeared so during the Galactic Empire. But those were some of the more interesting areas that I found in the book, and I'm pretty invested at this point in the main storyline, with just to see where they go now with the Wexleys and whether or not they can find Nora's husband and Temin's father. But I do like the main group that we have going here. We have our sort of the mother and son, and we have our ex-Imperial loyalty officer, our bounty hunter, who I guess is in the employ of the Republic at this point. But I also, too, I didn't say too much about Jas and Sinjir. I mean, I like those characters. There's not too much to say, but I do like that group. We also have the Special Forces guy, Jom. So I am interested to see, and of course, Mr. Bones. But I am interested to see what happens to them in the next 2 books. But also, too, just a little bit more that I'm looking forward to. Again, we had the scene with Han and Chewbacca, so I think they're going to go try to free the Wookiees on Kashyyyk. And I do like that they kept the storyline, which was in the EU previously, just where the Wookiees had been enslaved by the Empire as slave labor, and the fact that they were used to help build the Death Star. So that's something I'm definitely looking forward to. Also, with sort of just the scene that we saw at the very beginning of the book, we have Jack on Coruscant, who's part of the Ankle Biter Brigade. I thought that was really enjoyable. That was a great part of the book. So it's going to be interesting to see, I guess, what these kids on Coruscant are going to do. And it will be interesting just to see what happens with Jack. And I think that there was another one who fled Naboo to go back to the fight on Coruscant. So that's something I'm definitely interested in as well. See what happens as they sort of bring the battle all the way to the capital of Coruscant. And then also, too, we had the little scene on Tatooine. Again, interesting things that are all setting up into the next coming books, I hope. We had sort of the sheriff, who I think is going to try to take back Tatooine to some extent, as it had sort of fallen to lawlessness under the Hutts during the Empire. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens and what comes about on Tatooine. And then just lastly, I forget what their character name is, but we just have sort of the father and the husband who lost his wife and daughter, and had sort of just gone to, and almost fled to Jakku, just to sort of get away from the war, which of course, as we know, the large war that's going to sort of bring an end to this galactic civil war is going to occur on Jakku within the coming months. I think that's 1 year out from sort of the events of a Return of the Jedi. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when this individual is faced with the war coming right back into his life. Right back onto the planet of Jakku. But also, too, I'm hoping that we get in the remaining books the Battle of Jakku. So that's a question that I'm wondering at this point. Are we going to see that battle? I'm going to sort of guess and sort of put it out there that I think that we will. And then also, too, are we going to see Snoke, or are we going to see the Imperial Exodus to the Outer Rim, and some sort of indication that we're seeing the first steps into the rise of the First Order? And also, too, are we going to see Brendel Hux? I did a video recently on the rise of General Hux, so it's going to be interesting to see if we see something on the Imperial Exodus. I'm really hoping to, again, any information we can get on Snoke. I know it's probably a lot to hope for, but somebody had made a comment on one of the past videos, just the fact that a lot of the canon books are sort of playing it safe. Ever since that comment, I'm sort of recognizing that more and more. I really want to see a push to not just play it safe, but let's see if we do get that first introduction to Snoke, or even the rise of the First Order this early on. I really hope that in the next coming books we see something to that extent. But I think that there's a lot to look forward to in the remaining 2 books of the trilogy. Aftermath Life Debt, the second book, comes out in a couple of weeks. So I look forward to reading that, and then also giving a review of that book as well. But those are my general thoughts of Star Wars Aftermath by Chuck Wendig. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. And also, too, if you guys could just keep those suggestions coming, because I don't know if I would have read this book had it not been for the suggestions that you guys gave earlier on. So I really appreciate that, and would be happy to hear what you guys want to hear reviewed, or if you have any good recommendations. I would look forward to hearing those. I think also, too, a lot of people wanted to see the next book reviewed, either Tarkin or even Darth Plagueis. I think what I'm going to do is kind of maybe go in that direction. I think the next book review is going to be Plagueis or Tarkin. There's a couple other books that I wouldn't mind getting to as well, so we'll see. But I think right now it's going to be either Darth Plagueis or Tarkin. So I hope you guys enjoy that one. But that's it for this review. Again, too, my general thoughts, I think that if you had the opportunity to pick it up, I think that it would be an enjoyable read. But that's my review of Star Wars Aftermath. I hope you guys have a great start to the week here, and I look forward to talking to you guys again soon.